this one starts melting off, I'll just edit it out, you know.
Okay, he looks smelling the whole time.
Yeah. Can you hit stop broadcast for me when it's done?
Sure.
And I'll cover on and collect everything.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, honey.
Yeah.
I just looked up. I'm like, I hear someone I know. So.
Oh, good.
Thank you, sweetie.
It's funny. All right.
What?
Maybe I should sit like
You're taking a table?
over there so I can watch. I'll see. Oh, I didn't even actually sign in. Pay attention. I'm having a real rough time. I'm just kidding. I lost my keys yesterday morning for 3 minutes. They were around my neck. Oh, I know. Darn it.
And I'll stop. I don't
Yeah.
understand the, oh my gosh, it was embarrassing. Fill into your district office field. Do they have that on here, though? Because all this says you.
Yes.
To assume, yeah.
I didn't think. Yeah, make sure you guys know it, guys. Forget about it.
You have those in your way? Yeah.
And
then I can find it. Right, yeah, that's my site.
Meeting session, we got all a little bit late.
What's that?
The meeting session, we got all a
Yeah,
little bit
that's
late.
fine. I don't, you guys have lunch after this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. What do you guys, no worries. So, yeah.
Sounds good.
No, I just. Over there, the blue iPad, the blue computer, notebook, whatever. Who makes it?
Starting to say,
It was a Catholic Pfeiffer, PH. Basically, poverty and social emotional learning, how do kids, come in beliefs based upon your social economic background, education from trauma-informed care,
I'm sorry.
trauma-informed care involving real life case studies. Yeah, Katrina.
I think you know almost all. Yeah, yeah. They said.
It was. Yeah, because you talked about the fact that
And,
kids can't learn math, don't care. If they're worried about some basic need not being met, and they're coming in with that baggage, there's really not anything see as a school district over the years.
Oh, yeah, yes.
I talked about it and she talked about going back to the real source, the real root, the beginning of the problem, the issue. And I think in school district, we never want to go and pick at that.
Yeah.
Find that real root problem.
Yeah.
So let's do this modification. Let's do this. This kind of thing. And then kick it down the road. Yeah, I only got a year to deal with it. So, I want to make a difference, but I don't really want to change it. Oh, yeah. And it's too scary to actually pick out the real problem. And nothing that has their guts to face the real issue. I don't know, if we will, where this will go, and we'll practicality of our application. But it used to be, voice saying the truth.
Yep. Even just from your perspective too.
Yes. Yes.
Being reminded that students have different backgrounds.
So this one they just recently dissected a pig.
I've been teaching for over 30 years.
Never.
I just felt too many times, we're not actually addressing.
Jody told me I have to turn the thing down, and I need to take off. But I can hit a button, I'm not stupid. I really don't even have to do it, although I feel like maybe I should actually.
She done beliefs affect behavior. So if you want to change behavior,
I need plans for those. They had to show up to those traits at the end.
again, the
Parents to offspring, so we had our own plans. Ag plan, we had to make them.
change behavior.
No, we made them of styrofoam bowls, and so we had to make sure that they had.
Yeah, I mean, there is some,
And then we presented
But then there should be an understanding, you can go through it.
Yeah, and I don't know.
It doesn't have to be. But we can I mean, they are strong motivators to have you behave a certain way and to understand that it's your own teaching.
I was wondering.
Power to teach your
Maybe it
Did anybody not get a handout? Anyone? We're good?
They had to go. That was supposed to be
Alright, how's everyone doing? Good. Excited to get done listening to a nice long session and then come sit and listen to my session for another. It'll end up being, I'm not going to keep you guys past noon because I know you have lunch, right? At noon? Yeah, I won't do that. Never do that to you guys. No, I guess I'll just get started. People might still trickle in. I think everybody got a handout, right? Perfect. Okay. So, we're going to be talking about the patterns of behavior today. First of all, I'm Josh Johnson. I'm a school psychologist intern. I work for the Rum River Special Education Cooperative, and I currently work in Mora, providing the school psych services there. And I'm an intern, so I'm just a master's level right now, working on my specialist through Minnesota State University, Moorhead. So that's kind of my professional training, but most of my experience working with kids was at a place called the North Dakota Autism Center. And there we did behavior therapy with students, typically with autism, but also kind of just a variety of disabilities. And we'd work with the student one-on-one, and we'd recognize their behavior patterns, and we'd try to adjust the environment and kind of the outcomes of their behavior to really guide them towards more appropriate behavior. So that's really what I'm hoping to teach you guys how to do today, at least to a degree, and in a way that kind of changes your perspective of when we look at student behavior. So the goals of today are to understand the ABCs of behavior, which are antecedent, behavior, and consequence. Explain those later. Learning how to identify the functions of the behavior, and then to understand the importance of preventative strategies, the importance of replacement behaviors, and then we're going to practice with some actual student examples. And you guys are going to get really bored if I'm just talking at you, so please, if you have any questions about what I'm saying, or if anything I say doesn't line up with kind of your experiences or your beliefs, please, by all means, share that with me, and we can talk it out and find some common ground. So, a few assumptions we're going to get into here. And these are assumptions that are based on behaviorism. These are things that I've really found to be true in all of both my training and just in interactions with students, and that's that all behavior follows a pattern. All behavior serves a function, and all behavior is observable and measurable. These are kind of things that we have to keep in mind whenever we're looking at a behavior. I didn't always believe all of these things. I thought behavior could be random. I thought kids could be mean just to be mean. But ultimately what I've found is that when we look at it with this perspective, all of a sudden we realize that student behavior can be changed, and that we can guide students to making more appropriate behavior choices. So one of the things in the title was functional behavior assessment. This is a fancy school psyche term for basically figuring out why a kid is doing what they're doing. Functional behavior assessment means we're looking at the behavior, and we're trying to figure out the function of that behavior. We're trying to figure out why the student is doing what they're doing. And it helps us identify how to prevent and respond to those behaviors when they happen. Your goal should be to end up with a hypothesis statement. That's going to look something like this, which is under certain circumstances, that's going to vary depending on the behavior in the student engages in the specifically defined behavior, and this behavior is reinforced or maintained by certain consequences. That's also known as the function of the behavior. We're going to get into a little more how we do this and more importantly, how we use this information in the classroom and for the students. So, the key to understanding a student's behavior pattern is to look at on the ABCs: antecedent, behavior, and consequences. First of all, who's all in here? We have who's high school? You, middle school, okay, elementary, intermediate. Oh, early childhood. Okay, all over the place. Yeah. Special ed. Okay. The rest of you are general ed. Anybody I'm missing? Or no? Okay. What are you guys hoping to get out of this? Why did you pick this session over a different one?
How to deal with the antecedent before the behavior happens.
Perfect.
Or at least figure out what what it is.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, we're definitely going to spend a lot of time on that. Anybody else?
How to help teach kids to own their own behavior and change their own behavior, have empowering over their maybe an inappropriate behavior, to change it to something else.
Yeah. Help them learn a better behavior.
Spend more time in my classroom teaching instead of trying to redirect behaviors.
Perfect. Anyone else?
The high school level, I'm looking at more as like, this is the consequence of your behavior. This is what happens when you do this. You know, like for me, I'm seeing 150 kids a day.
Yeah.
I end up dealing with the consequences instead of the antecedent.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's you guys are in the right room then, I think. That's what we're going to focus on a lot, especially that antecedent piece, the prevention. How can we shape a student's environment that sets them up for success, right? So, Getting back to the ABCs. The antecedents is anything that happens before the behavior. This can be things that are relevant to behavior, it can be things that aren't, they're just part of the environment. And then we have the behavior itself, which can be defined. Again, we should define it, especially if we're looking at addressing it. Everybody needs to be on the same page for what that behavior is. And then we have the consequences. The consequences are anything that happens as a result of the behavior. Some of these make the behavior more likely to happen again, some of them make them less likely to happen again, and a lot of them are just neutral outcomes of a student or person performing any behavior. So let's dig into these a little bit more. Antecedents and setting events. This is your A. Again, it's anything that happens before the behavior. Sometimes these are obvious, sometimes they're subtle. We talk about slow and fast triggers a lot. So sometimes these can be triggers. Some triggers are right in your face. They're right there in the moment that cause the behavior to happen. If you yell at a student, they might swear back, right? That's a fast trigger that has an immediate response. There's also things like set triggers, things that set the stage for this behavior to happen. So if a student is, what if they're hungry? What if they didn't sleep well last night? What if they got in a fight at home? There's all of these slow things that maybe we can't even see or know that they're there, and those things do impact the behavior. So you want to keep an eye out for those, but a lot of times those go unnoticed. So when I'm working with a teacher and we're trying to figure out the ABCs of a student's problem behavior, the question I'll always ask is, I'll ask, what happens before the behavior? And they'll be like, oh man, it's random, it's every single, I can't predict it, it just happens out of nowhere. Then I'll say, okay, if you're gonna set up a situation for the student to fail, if I was gonna come observe and I wanted to see the behavior, what would you do that would make the student do this behavior? And they'd be like, oh, well, I put him next to Jack for one, because they don't get along, and then I would I'd turn my back, and then maybe I'd walk out of the classroom. Like, they know the environment. You guys know when you really stop and think, typically, kind of what can set a student up for failure. So you want to watch out for those things and prevent those situations in the first place. Oh, the other thing I'll do is if they really can't, if the teacher can't, figure out a specific, or we can't work together and figure out what's causing the behavior, we'll just track the behavior. We'll track the antecedents behavior and consequences, and we'll look for a pattern. And more often than not, there is one, but a lot of times it can be really hard to find. So kind of the more antecedent data we have, the more we can be like, oh, it's actually right between 12 and 12:30 every day, even though the actual initial triggers might be a little bit different. There's usually a pattern. And then the behavior itself is, again, observable, measurable, changeable, and definable. So really, a lot of times I'll walk into a class and they'll say, oh man, Johnny just had an absolute meltdown. I don't know what a meltdown is. Every teacher has a different definition of what a meltdown is. So especially at, say, the high school level, when a teacher has, or a student has 7 different teachers, you guys all need to be on the same page of what does that mean? Because a meltdown to one teacher might be swiping everything off the table, destroying the entire classroom, and a meltdown to another teacher might be sitting with their arms crossed, refusing to work. Right? So especially when we're working across professionals, we need to have a consistent definition. Right? These are words that we use a lot, and they're not bad words, but they're words that need to have a definition attached to them for the purpose of working on adjusting a behavior. And the targeted behavior needs to be important. This is important too because a lot of times a behavior that might annoy you isn't necessarily a behavior that's worth addressing. So our priorities for behaviors are anything that interferes with safety of students. That's our top priority. Students engaging in unsafe behavior, that's one we're going to target first. The next one is interfering with learning of the student or other students, right? Self-explanatory, that's the goal of education, is to teach students. And then we have socially important behaviors. These are things that are going to set the student up for a successful life in the future, or behaviors that are socially important for their interactions with peers, and that kind of thing. And then down here we have, annoying behaviors, maybe tapping on the table or tapping their foot. Things that aren't actually interfering with learning, aren't necessarily socially important, but are things that you might want to change just because they're not enjoyable. And those are bad to address, but you want to make sure you're addressing all these first. Okay, and then we have our consequences. Again, the consequence is anything that happens as a result of the behavior. This includes things that make the behavior more likely to happen, things that make the behavior less likely to happen, and things that just happen as a result that don't necessarily impact the likelihood of it happening again. So when I ask teachers about the function, I'll say, how does this work for the student? How has this worked for the student in the past? what outcome is making this more likely to happen in the future? And that is what a function is. So students will engage in the behavior will have an outcome, and the student will learn that that outcome will happen again when they perform that behavior. And the typical functions of behavior fall under these four categories. Friendly little acronym is SEAT. So the functions can be sensory, meaning access to what your body needs, right? A classic example of this is you're out running, you're antecedent, you get a drink of water, that's your behavior. Your consequence is your body's need for water is met. That's a sensory need. Escape or avoid, this is when you engage in behavior to get out of something, some unpleasant activity, or to avoid an upcoming unpleasant activity. That's to escape the behavior. Attention is a big one. I'm sure you guys see this a lot in your classrooms. Either attention, positive or negative, from teachers or students themselves. That's an incredibly powerful motivator for a lot of students, and that's one of the toughest ones to address. And then we have access to tangibles. It's like they gain something physically that they want. Those are the general categories. So when you're thinking about a function, try to keep that in mind, and pretty much every function is going to fall under these categories. Actually, all functions are going to fall in this category. Any questions about those, the antecedent behavior consequence or the functions? And we'll get into these a little bit more. Anyone? Okay. So again, those questions we ask. What sets the stage for the behavior to happen? What does the behavior look like, and is it worth changing? And then what were the results of the behavior, and what's going to make that behavior more likely to happen again? How did the behavior work for the student? So, here's some good examples here. I'm going to require that you guys answer. So, here's your antecedent. Again, you guys have the printout too, so you can cheat, I'll allow it. But your antecedent is this early morning, you're in bed, and your alarm is going off loudly. What are you likely to do based on this setting of it, this antecedent?
Yep. Get up.
Get up.
Snooze.
You are going to press the off button on your alarm. That's a defined behavior, and that's gonna. What's that gonna do? Why would you do that?
Stops the noise.
It stops the noise. So you get to escape that unpleasant sensory experience of that noise going off. So in the future, are you next time that your alarm is going off and you're in bed, are you gonna hit the off button again? You are, right? Because it worked for you. It turned the noise off. That's the function of this behavior, was escaping that unpleasant experience. Here's another example. And typically in the schools, we start with the behavior, right? We try to figure out what happens before and after. So we got a couple friends. This is Mike and Zane. So the behavior itself is Mike knocking on Zane's door. What's going to lead up to that?
Let's talk to him.
Yeah, you want to talk to him. Specifically, what can you observe that Mike might be doing before he knocks on Zane's door?
Walking to the store.
Mike's going over to Zane's house. He's going to visit, right?
Yeah.
He approaches the door. And what's going to be the consequence?
Yeah.
Zane's going to open the door. Zane answers the door. Next time Mike goes over to Zane's house, is he going to knock? Yes.
Yeah.
Mike's going to knock next time because it worked for him. And it's worked for him a lot of times. Okay, so now let's get a nice education example. So let's pretend we're in an early childhood classroom. It's during free play time, and another student is playing with George's favorite toy. George pushes the student to the ground, and he takes the toy. Why did he do that? Exactly. That's the consequence. That's the function of behavior. He gets the toy. He gets it even if just for a little bit. Later on, the teacher might, if the student George pushed over is, able to explain to the teacher what happened, the teacher might take the toy away from George, but not every time, and it's usually going to take a while. So George gets immediate access to that tangible. That's the function of that behavior. Okay, here's a good one. High school math class. Todd is failing math. He hates math. The teacher is asking students for specific answers to questions. Cold calling on students, right? What does Todd do? Todd writes profanity on the desk. He swears at the teacher when she notices and when she calls him out. Consequence is, Todd gets sent to the principal for punishment. What's wrong with this?
He doesn't have to do math.
He doesn't have to do math. So if Todd does this every day during math, or once a week during math, or when the teacher is cold calling on students, this isn't punishing. This isn't punishing the behavior.
rewarding.
It's rewarding the behavior, exactly. So this is the stuff we have to watch out for in education. This stuff happens all the time. And we're all guilty of it. We see a student and we accidentally reinforce the behavior rather than essentially punish the behavior.
So you're kind of providing a consequence to the swearing part, which is still following, school policy and things. But indirectly, you're having the kid meet his need by avoiding the situation, getting out of math, not having to do math.
That's exactly right. Todd gets to escape. So if Todd does this one time, guess what? Sending Todd to the principal worked. That punished the behavior. Todd doesn't do it anymore. But if this is a pattern that happens, that's why. Because he gets to get out of there. So anytime you see a pattern of behavior that happens over and over and over again, it's typically a consistent function or consequence. Okay. Let's work on one together. This is one you guys see a lot, I'm guessing. Shot in the dark here. Student blurts an answer. There isn't a right or wrong answer, but what are common antecedents to this? Teacher asks a question. What else? Yeah.
I believe. No.
Kid likes to talk. He
likes to talk.
It's social.
Yeah, that's a kind of a slow trigger, overarching kind of student characteristic.
They want attention.
They want attention. That's getting out the consequences.
It could be something they're really excited about.
Topic of student interest. Okay. Any other antecedents?
No clear expectations for how to answer.
That's a good one. Yep. No clear expectations on how to answer the question. A history of this happening over and over again. Other students are doing it too, right? Those are antecedents. How about consequences? What's the typical consequence of a student learning the answer? Why do you think they do that?
Attention.
Attention, they're heard.
Because if they raise their hand, they might not be called on, because they want to
Exactly.
share their answer.
Yeah. They get their question answered. They get the attention of peers and the teacher. They know that they have the right answer. It's a source of pride for them. That's positive attention. It's things that they want. So this is a fun one. You can work on how to address it later. And again, there's no magic bullet to anything. But let's do a case example here. This is a student named Billy. He's a 3rd grader, and he's going to engage in something. Fancy term for this is elopement. In the psych or early childhood world, we call this running. Elopement is running away. So basically, Billy's supposed to be somewhere and he bolts. So I want you to watch for that behavior, and I want you to figure out what the antecedent of that behavior is and the consequence. Elopement has a pretty consistent consequence for people. So.
Bunt. B-U-N-T in perfect cursive. Any more brain busters?
Risotto.
Those are Z's.
They look like ours to me.
That's not fair. Risotto is not a word. He's a baseball player. You're cheating.
Would you like to try the word buzz?
I hate cursive and I hate all of you. I'm never coming back to school. Never.
Okay. Antecedents to this. What led up to it? What caused it to happen?
He didn't know how to make it.
He didn't know how to make a Z. Yep, he was feeling embarrassed.
Don't like that he got the wrong answer.
Yeah. Did the teacher teach him how to make a Z? No. She set the student up for failure, didn't she? And what was the consequence? He bolted. What happened? He got out of the situation. Right? No more negative attention from peers. No more people laughing at him. No more task demands of having to do cursive. I also don't know how to make a Z. Okay, this is one where the quality of the acting is going to drop quite a bit here. But this is a student named Shane. Shane The behavior we're going to look at, there's a lot of behaviors here, but specifically the one we're going to look at is Shane does not follow teacher directions within 5 seconds. This is non-compliance, or however we want to define it. Sometimes this might be looking down, doodling, or even leaving the classroom. But this is the behavior we want to address. And there's going to be times when a teacher's going to place a demand, and he's going to comply. So let's look for a pattern to see when he does this behavior. Kind of differentiate that from when he actually responds to the teacher's request.
Okay.
Video.
Jay, would you take out your MacBook? Or page 47? Jay, would you work that problem for me? Good luck working. Okay? Okay, nice work. Problem 2. Jay. I don't even know what page that. We're on page 47. Why don't you just leave that word? With your MacBook. Would you like to work problem 2? Any good? Okay. Is that correct, Shane? Is that correct? Okay, we're not going to go on to the answer. Is it correct? I'm not playing your stupid game. Excuse me, I need you to have a seat. Shane, don't walk away from me. Shane.
Hey. What are the antecedents to Shane not following the teacher direction?
Being put on the spot.
Obviously focused on something else.
He was doing the quality is pretty low.
I would say that it had to do with the math. He couldn't turn to page 47. He didn't know which number they were on.
Yep.
I would say it was deeper than that. I would say there's some slow, hidden kind of things going on because he can open up his book. He can follow. Those are basic, very expectations that he should be able to follow. But he wasn't.
Yeah.
So there's something else going on deeper behind the scenes that.
Well, and we know he's capable of following directions because when the teacher asked him to get up quickly and go to the back, he did. And he got his book, he brought it with him. He wasn't happy, but he did.
Yeah. Side note, does moving in the back class do anything?
Oh,
Well, he actually watched a little bit before he got called out again.
That's true. But what did having him in a different seat have to do with? It isn't really tied to behavior concerns, right? In this case. But that's a tangent. So other antecedents, what do we think is the case here? What set the student up for failure? The math. He doesn't know how to do the math, more than likely. Because again, when the request was go to the back room, he did. Because that's not tied to it. If he has to open up his book, then he might have to do math. He didn't open up his book. So, consequence of not following the directions? Doesn't have to do math.
Inconsistent.
What do you mean by that?
The teacher asked him to take out your book, turn to page 47. Well, he took out his book, but he didn't open it. And the teacher didn't follow through.
Yeah.
So there's inconsistent consequences, so he doesn't know when he really needs to listen, because then the teacher asks him, is this correct? Or did you want to do problem number 2? He didn't answer, so the teacher just moved on. So he doesn't know when he has to respond.
Yep. And then when push came to shove, he bolted right.
And even the way that he talked, the teacher talked to the student, he said his tone and everything was different when he talked to the girls that responded and went up and did, oh yeah, that's great. And then, hey, he's sharp and quick. And,
well, and I don't know if it was the acting or whatever, but his wait time was awful.
yeah, very short.
I mean, there's hardly any time to process anything.
Yep. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? That's kind of a good example of kind of those antecedents you can't always see. And here's another one. We'll do this one quick. Yeah, this is inappropriate vocalizations. This is watching this classroom, which kills me. So the behavior is loud student noises that are out of the context of the lesson and that are louder than the typical speaking voice. You're going to see a lot of cutaway. So, antecedents to loud student noises. This wasn't any one student, I don't think. I think this is a few different students who were doing the same behavior. But what was the antecedent to all of it?
Quiet
Change their
classroom.
direction.
So that'd be the potential function. The antecedent would be just a noisy classroom, right? Transition time. There's all sorts of things that fall into the antecedent. So we got that teacher as a teacher, bunch of students in the classroom, no clear expectations. And there's all sorts of things that fall into the antecedent. And if we're really going to dig into this, we'd probably watch this behavior on multiple days, multiple settings, and try to figure out if there's a consistent antecedent that always sets it up. Behavior we know, what was the consequence? Every single head in that room looked at the student when he walked in and went, "Yo!" Everybody went and gave him the attention. Just about, yeah. We watched it again. Every single head. So that's what the student was feeding off of. And probably also the teacher reaction of not knowing how to address it. I don't know what I would do either, to be honest. But not addressing it and having that student like, "Oh man, what's she gonna do?" Like all of that was probably feeding into that. So that would be something. A behavior that's probably worth addressing. It's probably going to be a lot here and a little bit over here. Any questions on these things so far? Okay, and we've gotten this a little bit too, but the functions vary for every student. So let's take the antecedent out of it for a second. Let's look at the student. Maddie swears at a teacher. What's the consequence? She gets a verbal reprimand from the teacher. She gets sent to the principal. The principal discusses the incident with the student at length, and they reprimand them, and they threaten to call the parents, and threaten to suspend her. Will Maddie do this again? Depends, exactly. This depends on all kinds of things. What if Maddie doesn't like to be in that classroom? What if Maddie really likes attention from that teacher? What if the principal is like an absolute hunk and Maddie just wants to see that principal? She's going to do this again to go see the principal. Right? There's all sorts of things that don't fall into this grid that vary the value, positive or negative, of the consequences. That's something we always have to keep in mind. What's going on back here that's filtering in and making the consequences more or less valuable? We see this a lot with things like anxiety. We know students who have anxiety, right, which is an antecedent, it's a setting event, it's a student characteristic. That makes escaping social environments or any environment that causes that student anxiety, that makes that way more valuable than the consequence side. It makes it much tougher to kind of beat out with the replacement behavior. So here's another fun example of, again, all of these are things I've seen in real schools, I promise. So Jackson's at lunch with his friends, talking about video games. Jackson's video games at home, lunch ends. Jackson skips school after lunch, goes home, plays some Fortnite. Jackson gains access to the video games, right? What's the school going to do about this?
Freak out, because I actually had that happen last spring. It was terrifying because I lost a kid.
Yeah.
And it was
9-year-old, first of all.
It was a 9-year-old, yeah, and it
I was
was
picturing high school, but
Yeah.
No, that was, I did not enjoy that.
what I saw a school do in this situation, student was skipping class. What did they do? They suspended him. What's wrong with this?
You weren't able to play video games.
Does he still get the video games? Yeah.
Yeah.
He gets more of it. You would hope. Right? So that in and of itself is not a punishment. That's a reinforcement. That makes him want to do this even more. So it doubles down on what was the function. So this is the kind of stuff we got to be really careful to avoid. So what do we do about it? Right? We've been talking about the problem. We talked about identifying the problem, identifying the pattern. How do we address it? We make the behavior not work for the student. Or we make a new behavior that's better, easier, faster, or more efficient to get that function of the behavior or a similar function that's more motivating. It's called a replacement behavior. So our simple grid, our simple ABC grid turns into two grids. This is our problem behavior. This is the behavior we want to change. This is our replacement behavior. This is what we want the student to do. It's really important to know what you want the student to do. Because 9 out of 10 times you can find a good replacement behavior that will meet the same or a similar function. Okay, so let's go back to Billy here. So Billy had a bad day at school yesterday, right? And he's at home. This is the next morning. The behavior is going to be faking sick and staying at home.
Swear to God, I'm sick, I can't go to school. If you're gonna stay home.
All right. So, Billy's being sick, Billy wants to stay home. Why? It's two parts. He doesn't want, this is what we want him to do. We want Billy to go to school. But Billy doesn't want to because he has to interact with peers and teachers, and Billy has to do schoolwork at school, and he doesn't want to. Consequences are staying at home. He gets to be at home, access to preferred activities, right? And he gets to avoid it. So what does one need to do? Watch.
Swear to God, I'm sick, I can't go to school. If you're gonna stay home today, you can help me shave my arm.
What does this do to our whole grid? Which is he gonna choose? Consciously or unconsciously, this is so much better. And nobody's gonna argue with that. He's not gonna argue with that. This suddenly becomes such a better alternative than this. So, this is an example of kind of your standard add a consequence to the behavior you don't like and they'll automatically do the next behavior. This happens sometimes. But we still need to identify what this behavior is and encourage him to go to school. But I thought that was a fun example. Oh, and what do you think would happen if Billy decided to stay home and Juanita did not make him shave her armpits? Exactly. It reinforces it, and Juanita loses all of her bite as somebody who can add a threat of a consequence, right? That's something that's really important. If you're gonna set a consequence to something, you gotta follow through, because in the future that's gonna set the tone for whether or not they believe you or not. Here's an example of a completely hypothetical person. We'll call him Josh Johnson, and he's late for work. That's our antecedent. Problem behavior is driving way too fast on Highway 47. I mean, just on the highway. Basically, a behavior we want to see is him driving the speed limit. So let's look at our consequences of both of these. Which one am I going to pick? This is going to depend on the person. But this is my problem behavior. This is what I'm doing. This is the pattern that I have. Regardless of whether or not, for a lot of people, the chance of being pulled over and the chance of being an accident might outweigh being late for work. But clearly that's not the case for me in this circumstance, or for Josh in this circumstance. Because this is the behavior I'm choosing. So this is what we want. This isn't a bad option. But being to work on time is really important to me. And that's why this is the behavior that I'm choosing. So in a typical school, or like what Juanita tried to do, what do? We add something to this far right top grid, and we say, if the cops want me to stop, they're going to add 10 more cops to Highway 47, and they're going to make sure that if I speed, I'm getting pulled over. Okay, all of a sudden this changes it. When I look at this, it's like, okay, well, if I speed, I still might get to work on time, have a higher chance of getting a ticket, and an increased chance of accident. That's not a good option. Down here, I'm maybe late to work, which is important to me. I don't have a chance of getting pulled over and a lower chance of an accident. No, this is tough. There isn't an obvious, clear choice here. What am I probably going to do?
First one.
I'm either going to continue with the habit, right? Or I'm going to make my third option. I'm going to take 169, I'm going to drive 90 miles an hour. This is what I'm going to do. Because then all of a sudden, well, this is my same consequences as before. So yeah, we got me off of 47, but I found a different way to speed and to get to work on time. What's the real problem here, guys? Exactly. What happens when you change this? Leave for work on time. Why would I ever do this when I can do this? Unless I just really like driving fast. But this is all of a sudden the better option. Okay, so if we change the antecedent, we change the environment, the setting event that leads up to it, we can prevent this from happening in the first place.
Yeah, kids, because you just, I know, you fight about like pants and stuff.
Oh God, pants.
Socks,
Yeah.
not wearing shorts when it's -20.
Yeah, I'm not saying changing the antecedent is easy, because this is a whole different behavior that we have to address, and then we put that in its own grid and try to change this behavior to change this. Behavior change really. Okay, here's a student-specific example. Here's one that one that's pretty common for parents or early childhood educators. Bedtime, you got a 4-year-old. Charlie's placed into bed by the parents, and Charlie is begging for water, milk, cuddle time, read a story. all these things that she really wants, and the parents will sometimes get kind of, fine, I'm tired, you can watch TV for 5 minutes, let's just, and then it's off to bed though, then it's off to bed. And then she may or may not stop after that. But every night something different, and every night it typically results in her staying up a little later and getting a little bit of access, or at least getting the attention from the parents. Okay? We want her to go to bed independently. And again, the antecedents aren't any different, but why would a student or a child choose this and not this? There's no real reason. This is way more motivating.
Maybe they value their sleep as much as their parent does.
As a 4-year-old, not so much. I mean, it is important. It's a sensory need, right? Sleeping is a function, but it's not nearly as valuable as getting access and then eventually going to sleep.
Maybe they prefer to interact with their parent when the parent is positive and not crabby.
So,
Could be.
that's what you're. Okay, so this is what you should do, right? If Charlie's parents ignore those requests, as hard as that is, she doesn't get access to the preferred item. She just has to stay awake. Why would you choose this over this? Consciously or unconsciously, she's going to learn that this is a better pattern because it meets the sensory need, and this doesn't. This is just not getting any feedback. That's exhausting. She's going to go to bed eventually. Notice the eventually, right?
That's on my summer to-do list.
Yeah. So this is something called an extinction burst. Something called an extinction burst. So let's go all the way back to our first examples here. Right? This is something you've done every day. You wake up, you press the off button on the alarm. What happens if the alarm does not turn on? What if the alarm keeps going even though you press the button? What are you going to do?
Unplug it.
Yes.
You're going to hit that button again, right? You're going to hit again, maybe throw it across the room. It's going to burst, okay? But if every morning you wake up and you hit that button and it doesn't work, all of a sudden, suddenly, eventually you're going to give up. So you have that burst. You have that first day, those first few days, that first month, whatever it ends up being for this kid, right? Same with this one. What if Zane doesn't answer? What's Mike going to do? Knock again. And then he might knock harder, might not hear. Then he might call. He's going to try other things too to try to get that same function. So, find me again. Okay. Yep, so eventually, this is going to be the new replacement behavior. This is an intervention. This isn't easy. This is the parents making a conscious decision to adjust the situation around this behavior to set Charlie up for success. Any questions? So, talking about extinction bursts. Again, these are all real examples that I've had. So we were working on nap time. It's a different student, but we were working on nap time, and the student was basically doing this thing. She was avoiding nap. She was, requesting attention, asking for stories. She's hitting my leg going, John, hey John, my name's Josh. She says, hey John, hey John, hey John. It was annoying. And I was, I had to ignore because that's what we do in early childhood, right? It's what we're supposed to do. That isn't working. What does she do? She crawls on the table and she poops her pants. Oh my God. Okay. So what do we have to. We can't ignore this. We carry her to the restroom, we work with her, we clean her up. We try not to interact with her too much, but I mean, you have to communicate with the student in the situation. So what's the function of the problem behavior? Yeah, she finally gets it. It's not something most of us would choose, but for this particular kid, this worked. She did this a few times on us. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to nap independently, and we really wanted to request to go to the bathroom if she really needs to go. Okay? But she isn't taking this replacement behavior. So who has any ideas on what we could do? You have your notes, so you can look ahead and see what we did.
Schedule bath time before now.
Great idea. That's part of it. That's part of what we did. Okay. So we had her go to the bathroom before. What did that do? That made pooping impossible. She couldn't if she actually went before, which she did sometimes. But it lowered the chance of it happening, right? That's something we did to the antecedent that lowered the chance of problem behavior to occur, which is the point of anything you add to the antecedent to try to make them choose this better option. Okay, we also reminded her, we said, hey, if you need to go potty, you tell us. You tell us you can go potty, we'll take you there. give her a little bit of attention, and especially behavior-specific praise if she actually poops. Right? We don't want to just have that be the new behavior we need to change, but we want her to request to go to the bathroom, even if she doesn't go, because that's better than her, pooping under the table. So that's basically what we did. And we would, again, we'd pair that behavior-specific praise. We'd say, hey, you request to go to the bathroom, and you pooped in the potty, way to go. Okay, now it's time for nap, and we go back. We'd maybe let her do that once, maybe twice, depending on the situation. And the result was she would sleep. It was better. Again, it wasn't easy, but this wasn't nearly as hard as ignoring those other behaviors. So sometimes new behaviors will spring up and you need to address them, but that's how we addressed this one. So there's some really good, flexible preventative strategies, things that you can add to this antecedent column that are going to set a lot of students up for success. And this is, honestly, these can be adapted to all age groups. I know I have a visual schedule and a visual timer here, and those are great for early childhood, but they're great for elementary too, and especially ELL populations. The picture schedules are really important. And if it's even if it's a high school level, just write out the schedule. Let students know what's coming next. That's something that's really important. That's a really common antecedent trigger is transition timing or not knowing what's happening next. That's really it's really a common trigger. Visual timers are great for when students are doing activities that they like, so they know when it's going to be over. It's great for behaviors they don't like, so they know when it's going to be over. It's just, I've seen tremendous success with the use of visual timers. Another one up here I forgot to mention, consistent and predictable routines, right? Students thrive when they know what's coming. Students thrive when they know what consequences are going to happen and what their environment's going to look like every day. We also need to teach students, we need to model it, and we need to remind them what the behavior expectations are. So I get really disappointed when I walk into a classroom, and for one, I get disappointed when I walk into an early childhood classroom and there isn't a visual schedule. But I just think, man, these students don't know what's coming next, and that's especially for students with anxiety and students with all sorts of situations where it's so important for them to know what's coming. So that's one thing. But classroom rules at all age levels. These rules should be posted, and they should be reviewed regularly. That's something that students get, as soon as that reminder happens, they're more likely to do the behavior that's, especially if it's a positively worded rule, they're more likely to engage in that behavior. I actually thought of this on the way where I was driving on 95 between Cambridge and here, and I saw a sign, like just a typical MnDOT sign that said, pay attention to driving. What did I do? I paid more attention to driving. So it seems silly. I know the expectations. I'm an adult. I know the expectations of driving, just like a seventh grader knows the expectations of the classroom. But just by having that in there and reminding them, we see tremendous success.
Weren't you paying more attention to reading the sign than you were to driving?
Immediately following. Another big one here is, and this goes under consequences too, but behavior-specific praise of expected behaviors. Time and time again, the research has shown that behavior-specific praise is just the best thing we can do in the classroom. You're supposed to have a ratio of at least 5 specific praise statements for every student, for every one critical or negative statement that you make to the student. That's been shown for actually all relationships in general, at least 5. And for the students who have higher needs, those ratios need to be higher. So it's not to say you can't criticize a student or you can't call out something they're doing that's wrong, but you gotta counterbalance that. You gotta keep that relationship strong, because this is more valuable if they like you. It's another thing that I didn't include, but having a good relationship with a student is really everything, and it changes the value of that consequence so much. Okay, and there's some really good class-wide management strategies, and I love these. Again, I get disappointed if I walk into a room and a teacher has behavior concerns for a student. I'll go, okay, what's your class-wide behavior plan? What are you doing to address the behavior of your class as a whole? I don't know. I try to, I have my rules up and I review them, and but there isn't a structured plan, right? It's just they're trying. I'm sure they're great teachers. They have good interactions with students, but they don't have a good system that's easily adjustable for the specific needs of their students. So again, have behavior-specific praise up there. That's huge. Teachers who have good behavior-specific praise really set their students up for success. Again, those good expectations, predictable consequences. There's some really good tier 1 research-based interventions that are out there. We know that whole class token economies are really valuable and they're really flexible. These can be things like bonus bucks, right? Where you have monopoly money. That's great because you can differentiate based on what the student's doing. You can reinforce a small expected behavior with $5 bill. Way to go, okay, that was good. You called attention to it, it's behavior-specific praise, and you added an actual tangible reinforcer. Right? They can later on exchange this for things that they actually want. But if a student does something that's completely unexpected and awesome, you can give them $500. Right? You can differentiate your reinforcement based on what that student needs and the nature of the behavior that they showed. Lottery tickets are really cool too. Students love when they get a reward and they don't exactly know what the reward is. You hand out a lotto ticket whenever a student does something cool that you like to see, and they hang on to that. And then at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, you pull one or more out of the hat, and then they get whatever it is for that day. It's really motivating for students, even if they don't necessarily even want the reward. There's something about that whole process that's really fun for them. Yeah, just really any class-wide reward too. Your whole team or your whole class is working towards a goal. Maybe it's a second grade teacher that was stars on the board, and they got 10 stars. We all got a huge reward. It was awesome, and we all worked for that. And that creates an environment where students are encouraging each other to engage in appropriate behaviors, which is something that is the best way to address negative student attention as a reinforcer. There's also some structured ones like good behavior game and positive peer reporting and just general group contingencies. And these are some really good websites for class-wide management strategies. Please hang on to these handouts and check out these websites. I love Intervention Central, especially for behavior. PBIS World is more behavior as well. Forward Clearinghouse has some behavior, but they're mostly academic. They have a description of all these interventions and how to implement them, and basically a description of the research saying that, yeah, this has worked. This has worked in a ton of classrooms time and time again to address these behaviors. Have you guys heard of either of these ones, good behavior game or positive peer reporting? Okay. Good behavior game is super fun and easy to implement. You guys over here on the blue team, you guys over here on the red team. Blue and red. And then we probably work as a team, or if the teacher, you know your behavior concerns of your students. There's a few different ways for this. You can do negative behavior. So you can be like, okay, a student blurts. If a student leaves their seat, if a student touches another peer and is distracting. And you have good definitions for those though. Then the team will earn a point. And then the team with the fewest points at the end of the hour gets some kind of reinforcement. Right? It's pretty simple. And that's been shown to work really effectively. A lot of people too will say, if they're within 5, you give them both the reward. That's a good way to kind of keep it from getting vicious. And you can also switch that. I would suggest switching that to positive too, saying, okay, every time a student raises their hand before they answer a question, every time a student shows positive behaviors that you want to see, then have them earn points, and the student or the team with the most points gets the reinforcing. That's a good behavior game. Positive peer reporting is awesome. Basically sets up situations every day where students get to give behavior-specific praise to their classmates about something they saw that student do that day. And then for every behavior-specific praise statement that the students say, the class gets points towards a total class reward. So students are reinforced for providing behavior-specific praise. Behavior-specific praise is reinforcing the student's appropriate behavior. So it's this awesome chain that creates a really positive classroom environment and, again, encourages students to draw attention to appropriate behaviors rather than inappropriate behaviors. Any questions there? We want any better descriptions of those? I know I rushed through them. We have 12 minutes left. I want to give you guys a chance to practice. Okay. Okay. Let's go back to Shane. You guys want to watch Shane again, or do you remember it pretty well? So we have our problem behavior. We talked about the antecedents, right? They were a math question demand, most consistently. Consequences were that you got to escape estimates, right? So what could we add? Why don't you guys do this in your actual notebooks if you have enough room. Otherwise, there's room on the back side. Read a brief description of what the antecedents and consequences were. And then the antecedent's going to be the same over here. And how do we get Shane to do what we want him to do? Work through this. Who has ideas of things we can add to the antecedent, or things we can, how can we change the consequence to set Shane up to do what we want him to do, which is to follow directions? Let's start with the antecedent because it's the most important, right? What can we do?
We pre-assign him a question so that he knows what's coming.
Yep, that's a great example. That's a great way to introduce a student and have them give an opportunity to say, hey, I'm only going to call on you once this hour, okay? But it's going to be answered question 45. Let's work through 45. 45, the answer to 45 is, t equals 2. I'm going to ask you this, okay? So when I ask you this, you're going to answer, okay? He says, yeah, sure. But I'm not going to ask you any other questions. He goes, okay. He's probably going to do that. That's way better than having to seem like the bad kid in class or to get kicked out of class. He doesn't necessarily want to get kicked out of class, but he does not want to answer that question. So giving him a specific one that he can answer. Or even better would be to teach him the math lesson and math assignment. Granted, he's a little old and that might be really pretty difficult to kind of intervene at this point. But because the antecedent is him not understanding the math. So giving him one opportunity to respond that he knows the answer to is a really good antecedent strategy. Okay, anything we could add to the consequences?
You could endure office hours maybe or something, like meeting with his teacher.
There's no right or wrong answer here. We're just brainstorming, right? What I would do would be what you had suggested, which is to create a situation where the student gets a chance to respond correctly, and then maybe work that out in the future from there. Because then the students staying in the classroom, they're probably going to be more likely to pay attention because they're not stressed about getting called out. And then we get this replacement behavior, right? Even if it's just once, it's a start. We don't see this, at least not as much. Okay. With that out of hand classroom. We know the antecedents were transitioning, kind of unclear expectations, unstructured time in general, right? Consequences, pure attention. So what do we add here, or here, or here that's going to make the inappropriate vocalizations less likely to happen?
And add structure to the antecedents.
Perfect. Yeah, clear guidelines of what's expected, and a consistent daily routine, really.
I would maybe make him be the greeter for the day. Maybe he can stand at the classroom, and if he really feels like welcoming everyone in, do that.
Yeah, give him a job, make that his, job to kind of get everybody's attention. Hey, class is going to start. You're my person.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So then what we turn the inappropriate noises, the inappropriate action into appropriate. Speaking of the greeter or the announcer or whatever it is, that sets them up for success. Sets them up for this. That's awesome, guys. I didn't even think of that. How about consequences?
Go back and do it again. Do it the
You can do
right way.
that. You can do that. Would that tap the pure attention though? Would that keep him from getting what he wanted?
Hopefully the kids don't keep paying attention as he walks in and out of the room again and again.
Yeah. So maybe it might work. It's definitely worth a try. It might work. And this might be something we have to add in the antecedent that changes the consequence. So I remember I had suggested the positive peer reporting or the good behavior game. What if the good behavior game was set up where it was, hey, every time half the class, anytime anybody in this class yells, no, you lose a point or you gain a point, however you have it set up. All of a sudden the classmates, or at least half the classmates, aren't going to give me attention. What are you doing?
You can maybe even give them, or like whoever was the noisy student or the group of noisy students, I mean, you could even have them just be like, man, we're having troubles with this. Would you want to create a skit showing us how we enter the room, or would you want to create how do you think we should enter the room? You need to teach your peers.
Yeah. So that goes to modeling. Right? Modeling and teaching the appropriate behaviors. That's huge. especially for younger kids, but we see it at high school levels too. Absolutely. Especially peer modeling is super, has been shown to be even more effective than if I was just going to act out how to walk into the classroom. Right, seeing a peer, especially a preferred peer. That's something else. So, we got 7 minutes. We can either do this example, or if anybody has a specific student in mind, which I have a feeling at least somebody probably does, right? Behavior they can't figure out, that they'd love to go through. We can do that
I have a
instead.
student that doesn't like contact with people. So
Okay.
the antecedent is me. So I can't not work with him.
Yep.
I mean, it's, if I give them the direction to the prompt to use the bathroom or to work, or it's walk with me to go to speech or whatever, it causes behavior, and some of it's aggression, some of it's just not compliant.
Okay. So, let's walk through this a little more. Tell me a little more about the student. How old?
9 and 10.
9 or 10. Okay. General ed, typical functioning, or special education?
Yeah.
Okay. ASD? Yep. Okay. So, 9-year-old ASD. We know this stuff can be important, so we're just going to write it down. Is it typically transition times?
It does not matter.
Okay. Let's start with the behavior then. What's the first behavior you would want to address? Would it be
Biting.
okay, biting? That's annoying. I don't like biting. I've been bitten several times and it's not fun. That's a good one because that's a safety issue, right? That's top of preference. Is biting usually packaged together though, with other things? Sounds like non-compliance to
Right.
demands. Right?
He's also nonverbal.
Okay. That's important. I know you guys can't see this, but maybe you can, mostly for my benefit. So we know, so what happens around the biting?
Stops responding.
Stops responding?
Yeah.
Okay. So basic, just kind of non-compliance leading to aggression, right?
Yeah.
Kind of tied together. Okay. So we're not going to fully define these, even though we would if we were actually addressing this in the school, right? But this gives us an idea. And what do they get out of it?
I go away.
Okay. So he engages in these, and you completely leave?
If I get bit, yeah, I gotta go report it.
Sure. Okay. What's your name?
Yes.
Jess. Jess leaves. What happens after you leave? Does it still keep going?
For the most part, no, he gets a timeout.
Okay.
And so then that semi-reinforces because he's getting his time away from people. He likes his own world.
Yeah.
But then if you stay in his space, then I can't say 100% that the next person is going to get bit, but I would say that it's a very high percentage.
Or at least something like it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what consistent antecedents are there? We touched on a little bit, kind of those big picture things about the student. Are there times a day or specific demands that are placed that make it more likely to happen? If you're going to make them bite you, how would you do it?
Ask them to use the bathroom. Does that work? Ask them to walk somewhere. Stand within arm's length of them.
Okay, standing close. Okay. So I'm going to get you guys out of here, I promise. This is fun though. Thank you. Thank you. Get excited for this. Okay. So what's the replacement behavior?
Not biting me.
Okay, that's the absence of a behavior.
Following the request.
Following the request. Yep.
Tolerating being with people.
Yep. With people. Okay. First of all, I have to ask, because this is a nonverbal ASD student, when you're placing these demands, does he understand?
I think so.
You're verbally presenting the task, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
verbally, and then he has a,
Visual
yeah.
cue as well. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. That's kind of the first thing we want to have, because what if he doesn't understand where he's going? That's going to impact, right? So the request would be, actually, he'd be with people, and he would be doing activities. Okay. And this is going to be the same. So, what can we add? Well, we're out of time. How can we make this a better option than make this a better option than this?
Is there any particular activity that he does during his time off that you really want?
So he gets the iPad during his time out?
Not during timeout, but that's the activity that he prefers.
Okay.
One of
So-
his preferred activities.
Is there any fun, like, game that requires another person, like a team game that he could play on the iPad? Like,
I have not thought of that, but like other like board games.
So
That sounds like a good idea, Brandon, like something he can engage with another person, and then maybe as a reward, then he gets to play by himself after, play with me first, then you can play by yourself.
Yep, that's perfect. So first, we had a first then board.
Yep, we got that.
Perfect. Okay. And then make sure the then is motivating.
Right,
Then's got to be really good, because he clearly hates this stuff.
right.
So the then has to be stronger than this. Especially, I'm not crazy about this timeout either. This is him. I mean, granted, I know he's being dangerous, but you're essentially
Right, reinforcing.
you're reinforcing it, and that's something that's really commonly done, and it's not an easy thing to take out, because it works. The biting stops when we give them a timeout, right? But you can't have a timeout from something that isn't fun. You can have a timeout from an enjoyable activity if they're doing it inappropriately. So kind of my main suggestions would be find a good then, and then don't let them escape. That's tough. That's
Buy
gonna be a lot.
stock and fruit snacks.
Yep.
You gotta be careful with unhealthy things. But I know. Popcorn's great. Popcorn is awesome. Kids love popcorn. It's pretty healthy, and they don't get filled up on it. We're pretty much done, but does anybody have any other thoughts on this? Or if anyone wants to hang out and chat, we absolutely can, Jess. We can dig into this a little bit more. Awesome. I don't know if you guys have any questions. Thank you. I did put my email on this. But you can find my email on the Rum River website, or talk to Chad or Danielle, or you can actually I'll just write it out.
Okay.
If anybody wants it.
I didn't stop it because of my
Anybody has any questions? Do they want the actual copy of this? By all means, absolutely, yeah.